Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I'm the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith. We hope that you enjoy our service today.
Almighty and everlasting
The title of my sermon today is Lessons from the Road and the Good Book. I have something extraordinarily exciting to share with you this morning. Everybody ready? You holding on to your pews? Because, honey, I am getting ready to offer you, drum roll, a motorcycle sermon. Yes! It's been too long. And that, just so you know, is why we just sang a Palm Sunday hymn. I'm sure some of you were wondering, wow, in September. But right on in majesty, hello. I mean, how much better could you have for words and a theme of a motorcycle sermon? Most of you know that Toby and I are longtime motorcycle riders. And every time we go away on a trip, we find wonderful life lessons. And last week was no exception. We were out in Wisconsin riding our bikes. And I returned triumphant with many wonderful things to share. But before I start, I want to offer a word to those doubters out there. You know who you are. Those of you who doubt the connection between motorcycles and spirituality. Now, I'm not saying you have to believe me, but brothers and sisters, you got to believe this book. And in this book are numerous examples of the sanctity of riding a bike. Consider Isaiah 54:14. Then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth. Or think about Jesus. All four Gospels describe him as the leader of a rough bunch of sinners who were disliked by all the decent folk. Basically, they describe Jesus as Marlon Brando in The Wild One. Scripture tells us that the Apostle Paul actually had a tattoo of Jesus. Galatians 6:17. From henceforth let no man trouble me, for I bear on my body the marks of Jesus. Of course, the most obvious example is the description of the biker and prophet Elijah. Kings 1:6. Elijah was a hairy man with leather about his loins. I rest my case. To me, riding a motorcycle is the pathway to God. It is the Autobahn to the Lord. It is an expressway to enlightenment. So every time I'm on that bike, I see sermons in everything. And there's so many sermons from our recent trip, I just couldn't decide, so this morning I'm going to preach 4. Short sermons, lessons from the road, and the good book. Lesson number 1, if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. Toby and I had planned a multiple day motorcycle trip from our cabin in Wisconsin way up to the Boundary Waters National Park, which is right on the Canadian border in Minnesota. It is a gorgeous place, collection of lakes, super remote. There's a wolf sanctuary up there. It's our kind of place. And we'd been planning this trip for weeks, had everything ready to go until wham, this big line of electrical storms decides it's just going to park itself over Wisconsin, and it stormed for 5 days solid. One thing Toby and I have learned riding motorcycles over the years is you have to be flexible. There will always be something that will make you swerve, that will make you take a different turn, that will change your route, that will change your plans. And you have to adjust. But in the end, you'll get where you're going. It's like the old saying goes, when life gives you lemons, you grab the tequila. You know, I love that saying. Said another way, if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. While the plan was to take a road trip on our bikes, the goal, the ultimate goal of our trip was simply for Toby and I to spend time together, to be out in the wilderness, to enjoy nature and some fresh air and some downtime. So what do? While the storms were just sitting on top of Wisconsin, we sat together in front of a roaring fire in the cabin. And when there was a little break in the storm, we'd go out in the dock and we'd fish. We took naps, we read great books, we made waffles. In short, we changed the plan, but not the goal. It's such an important lesson for us today. You know, we plan everything down to the moment. Our calendars, or bullet journals, I think as some folks are doing now, are just chock full of appointments and to-do lists and goals and projects. But the reality is, we don't always control what happens to us. As the book of James 4:14 says, you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. We don't control what happens to us, but we do control how we react and respond. While our day-to-day plans may change, we can still get where we're going. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. Lesson number 2, you have to take time to play. When the storm passed, finally, we had a couple of days left, and so Toby and I jumped on the bikes and just rode and rode and rode. We took a lot of rides around the countryside near the cabin, which a lot of that countryside's full of dairy farms. And one of the things I love to do while riding those country roads is play this game, where when I pass a herd of cows, I lay on the horn as loud as I can to see if I can get any of them to look up. Fun, right? You should try it. It's a really relevant game here in New York City. But ridiculous and goofy as I know it sounds, I love it. And yes, that game reflects the mentality of a 7-year-old, but that's the point. Sometimes we have to break out of our intensity. We have to break out of our seriousness and play. Studies actually show that play can lower stress levels. It can help our mental and physical health. It can help our relationships. Studies even show that taking small breaks from work can result in higher productivity and better problem solving. As Proverbs 17:22 says, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. All right, so you don't have to honk at a cow, but take a break. Be a kid for a few minutes. Jar yourself out of your adult rat race. Just take time to play. Which brings us to lesson 3. Stop and look up and around. One afternoon, I took my Harley Lightning, that's her name, out on a long ride along some remote farm roads, and after many twists and turns, I realized I had no idea where I was. Which was fine. I wasn't worried. I had a smartphone. So I pulled it out, turned it on, tried to GPS where I was, and no cell coverage. Panic began to creep in. My heart started beating faster. The worst had happened. I was going to have to read a paper map. I've used maps before, somewhere in the 1980s, but who remembers? But you do what you got to do. I pulled out my trusty road atlas. My brain slowly shifted into manual, started reading the roads, and then I looked up and around, and I started seeing landmarks that made sense, and eventually I found my way home. What a hilarious yet tragic lesson. Our modern virtual world has stolen our ability to engage in the real world. For example, I get up every morning, maybe you do too, and I turn on my phone to see what the weather is, as opposed to going to the window and looking at the sky. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters, but the sky trumps the Weather Channel every time. Our modern virtual world has stolen our ability to engage, learn, and be enriched from the real world. I can't help but think of the first 2 lines of Psalm 121, which was my mom's favorite psalm. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills. I will lift up my eyes into the hills. I will look to the hills. From whence cometh my help? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. The world is full of amazing things, including evidence of God's great power and grace in creation. If only we would follow lesson 3 and simply stop, look up and away and around. Our final lesson this morning is number 4, and it is entitled, Build Your Feet on Vibram and Your House on a Rock. I usually ride in a pair of Black Fry motorcycle boots. Y'all know the ones, square toe, have the harness on them. I bought them, she says proudly, in 1994 when I bought my first motorcycle. So I'm legit. And as you can imagine, those boots have been through it. They are all beaten up, or were beaten up, leather cracked. You could actually see my sock through one of the boots. But that was perfect, because to me, the outside of those boots just screamed, I am legit. They prove I'm a road warrior. And that's fine if the outside of a boot really matters, but for a true biker, it does not. What matters is the underside, the foundation. What matters is the tread. And one of the last days I got to ride, I was coming to a stop at an intersection, and I put down my ancient, beat-up, totally cool Fry boots on the pavement to balance, and whoa, my feet started sliding out from under me. Well, thanks to the rain that week, mixed with a bit of oil on the road, the surface was slippery. Had I had boots that had treads, I might have been fine. But no, I had to wear these cool, hip, fabulous boots whose soles had been worn down to nothing but just a slick piece of leather. Jesus warns us of this idea in a broader sense in Matthew 7:24. A wise man / woman builds her house on a rock. The rains fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat the house, but it did not fall because it was founded on rock / Vibram. We must be careful of the ground on which we choose to walk and live. Sadly, so many times we choose to focus on the outside of things, ensuring that what the world sees is cool and hip and legit and even perfect. But beware, when we focus on the outside of things, we forget what's important. We forget the foundation, the soul, the tread of life that keeps us balanced. And that foundation, brothers and sisters, that rock is God. One of my favorite scriptures, and one that our choir member Brian is going to sing in a minute, is from Isaiah. Those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. And there's the 4 sermons I wanted to share with you this morning. Lesson 1, if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, not the goal. Lesson 2, take time to play. Lesson 3, stop, look up and around. And lesson 4, build your house on a rock. You know, this is simple wisdom that's around us all the time. You can find it yourselves if you simply take a little time to be aware of the gifts around you. I just happened to find them on a motorcycle. And so this morning, that's what I wanted to share, is lessons from the road and the good book. And the people said, Amen.
They that wait, they that wait upon the Lord, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. They shall walk and not faint. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Shall renew their strength. They that wait upon the Lord, they that wait upon
We are so glad that you came to be with us in worship today. Thank you also to our live stream audience coming to us from all over. We hope you remember you're as much a part of this family as all of us sitting right here in the pews. If you're a visitor, I hope that you will come back and visit with us, be part of our community, keep in touch, and also remember that this is a community of faith in which you are always welcome, and you will always be considered family. And until we see you again, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And as we go through those doors, let us be flexible in the twists and turns of life. Let us find joy in everyday life. And let us find a rock upon which to build our lives. Most of all, as we say in the biker world, may you keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down. Amen.
Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise, the glories of my God and King, the triumphs of God's grace.
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.